this shed, as a starting point, this is a steel storage building that's available at the Home Depot. It's 10 feet by 8 feet, and it's some 60 and some odd inches tall. They say plenty of headroom if you're short like me, but if you're really tall, then you're going to be hitting your head a lot. I'm going to make my shed to look kind of like this, in that it will have a center pitched roof, double doors, and the proportions are going to be more or less like this. So we'll start in SketchUp. I'll leave Sue here so I'll have some sense of proportion. And I'm going to start by making a rectangle, which I will index first on the origin. So I click on the origin and then drag out to start making my rectangle. Now if I make a highly asymmetric rectangle and I look in my dimensions box, it says 12 feet by 3 feet. So I know that the first dimension mentioned here is the long one. That's kind of nice to know, because when I type in the dimensions, I would like my rectangle to be oriented about the same way. Instead of a 10-foot wide shed, I'm going to make a 12-foot wide shed, because that's the same length as 3 sheets of plywood next to each other. So I type in 12 feet and a comma and then 8 feet to accommodate the length of a piece of plywood. Hit enter, and now I have my overall base. I'm going to use my push-pull tool and push this upwards. Let's push it to the height of a sheet of plywood, which is 8 feet. Now if I rotate this, there's Sue standing next to this box, 8 feet by 12 feet. 8 feet is pretty high compared to Sue. So I'm going to have a roof pitch starting in the center and maybe going down 1 foot. I'll do this by shrinking this box here. I'll select this top surface, use my push-pull, and I'm going to go down by 1 foot. Type in 1 foot, hit enter, and then I'll make my line to go across the center. Use the line tool and index it on this edge, and then move it along until it snaps to the midpoint. Now I can click and snap to the midpoint on the other side, click again, and now I have my line. I've also highlighted or selected this face, but what I really want to do is select only this line. So I'll use my select tool, pressing the space bar to get the select tool, and select this line. I want to move this, use my move tool, click on that line, and start moving it upwards. Now I want to lock it into the vertical position, the blue axis. The way to do that is to press the up arrow, and you'll notice the cursor changes a little bit. It has this I don't know what that is, folded thing on it, indicating that I've locked the locked my movement to one of the axes. I'm going to bring it up 12 inches. Oops, didn't do that right. 1 foot. Upwards 1 foot. Okay, we'll warp it back down again, and this is what it looks like. Is that correct? Let's find out. I'm going to use the tape measure tool and just measure from the red axis up to the top here, and it says 8 feet. So I know that that's 8 feet tall. Measure from this axis to the corner here, that's 7 feet tall, so I know that this is a 1 foot. So now I want to make my door. I want my door to be taller, at least taller than Sue. Let's see how tall she is. She's 5'8" and some odd. 5'6" rather. So I could make my door 6 feet tall. I think I'll do that. I'll make my rectangle tool, and I want my door, a pair of double doors, 6 feet by 3 feet, starting at the midpoint, like this. If I look in the dimension box, it says the short dimension is the first, and so I'll say 3 feet, 6 feet. Press enter. And then I'll make the other door, which goes over here, 6 feet, 3 feet. Enter. So now I have my double doors. I would like my shed to have some kind of ventilation. What I think I'll do is I will put some windows or vented openings on this side and on the opposite side. I would like them to be evenly spaced within this area. This is 8 feet, and so let's say I want it to be 6 inches in from one side, 6 inches in from the other side. I'm going to use my tape measure tool, index it on this edge, and move in the green direction 6 inches. There. And the same on this side. Here. And I want it to be down, 8 inches. Now I'll take my rectangle tool and I'm going to make one rectangle starting at the intersection of these two guidelines. The two guidelines, by the way, because I started them indexed on that edge and that edge and that edge, these guidelines actually are coplanar with the side of the shed. They're not out here in space, which is good. So I'll make my rectangle. I'll start at the intersection, move it this way. How wide do I want it? I want it to be 8 inches wide. My long dimension is the second one. So how tall do I want it? Oh no, my long dimension is the first dimension. So I'll say 8 inches, comma, how tall? 4 inches. Is that big enough? I think I'll go 12 by 6. 12, 6. There. I like that better. So now I have this one rectangle here. I can right click on it, tell it to select the bounding edges. So now what I've selected is the surface plus its edges. I want to move this rectangle over to the other side and copy it. So I'm going to use my move tool, and I want this corner of the rectangle to be indexed against this corner here. So I'll click on that corner and move it. I'll press Control so that I'm copying, and then bring this over to this corner and then click once. And now you may recall that I can create multiple copies that are evenly spaced by putting slash and then typing in the number of copies I want. Let's say /4. So 4 copies plus the original is 5. Is that enough? Maybe that's too many. I'll live with it. Okay, press the space bar for my select tool. I like these, but I want them on the other side too, and I want them to be oriented the same way. First I'm going to select these by clicking and then pushing the Control key. You notice the little plus sign. That indicates that I'm adding to my selection. By the way, if you press instead the Shift key, I get a plus minus. That indicates that if I click on something else that's not selected, it will be added. If I click on something that is selected, it will be taken out of my selection. So I will select all these. I'm going to move these over to the other side and copy them. So I'll use my Move tool. I'm going to move them over here, but instead SketchUp is insisting on moving it up and along this plane. I want to move it along the red axis, so I'll press the right arrow key and move it on the red axis. And as is often the case when you're moving a feature that's on a different surface, is carrying the rest of the surface. We don't want that. We want to copy them. I'll press the Control key now, and so now I'm moving an independent copy of these along the red axis. I'm halfway there, but I want to see the other side. What you can do at this point actually is use your O for orbit hotkey, rotate into place, press, and notice that the move tool is still active. So now I can press M again for move and complete my move. Just moved a little bit and now it's over here. You'll notice we're still constrained on the red axis, and so they are lined up with the set of rectangles on the other side. And it snapped up against this surface. If I really felt like it, I could move it outwards. But I'm going to make sure that I'm snapped against the surface by indexing my move cursor onto that edge. Then click. Go to orbit. Let's make sure it worked. So there's the original and there's the copy. By the way, if I hit X for X-ray, you can see everything now, both copies, and you can see that they're in the right position, so that's good. So I have a set of vents, and you'll notice that these are a different color because these surfaces are the back side of the face. So what I could do is, if I wanted to, I can highlight them all, right click and tell it to reverse the faces, and now they're all white. Or because these are vents, what I'll do actually is delete them. So I press delete. I'll zoom in on there and move around, and you can see now these are just empty holes, and you can see the inside of your shed. So I will open up these windows on the other side too, selecting them, adding to the selection, press delete, and so now my shed has two sets of ventilation windows that are lined up to each other, 5 on each side, plus these doors. For the sake of appearances, I'm going to use the push-pull tool. I'm going to push this door inwards, say 1 inch. Press 1. And I will push this one the same distance. You'll notice it says offset limited to -1 inch. It's going to move in until it runs into the next face, or I can force my move tool to index against the face, and it will match up to that one. So click, and there we have our 1 inch indent. Okay, so this is going to be the end of my conceptual model. Regretfully, I'm looking at the back of the shed where Sue is living. It has my windows, and it has my doors, it has Sue, and a bunch of guidelines. You can go to the view options and tell it that you don't want to see the guides anymore, and all the guides will be hidden. In fact, you can do the same with the axes as well in order to show Sue standing next to your shed. This model does not show a lot of things. We have no door handles. I think the roof should extend outwards a little bit in order to give you an overhang and a drip line for rain. We need a foundation. There are all kinds of things that can be added to this shed. But this shed, as a conceptual model, I think is complete. This is more or less what I want it to look like. And so I'll save it.